The internet is full of some insane guitar builds, and for a woodworker like me, building a guitar feels like a lifetime achievement project. I've watched so many of those videos thinking, there's no way I could do that. Where do you even start? So today, we're gonna make a guitar for the very first time, from scratch, knowing nothing about proper guitar building. It's gonna be so easy, so cheap, so fast. Nothing could go wrong, right? Are you serious? Come on, dude!
Plug it and patch it.
Oh my gosh. Look at that walnut. I think we can work with that. Now this grain is interesting. That might look good resawed and book matched, but I've never done that before. The internet says you're supposed to build electric guitar bodies out of alder. And I tried, but all this alder is garbage. It's thin and rough. So I'm pivoting to my trusty paint grade beech, which I think is technically wrong, but it'll be fine. Oh, look at this maple. That, my friends, is what's called flamed maple. Something usually not spotted in a retail store like this. This is a huge find. That's how you can find it with those stripes. They don't know what they have. I bet if we cut that board open, it will have some nice flames. So here's the game plan. 1, build an electric guitar for the first time. 2, do it from scratch, no cheating. 3, make it perfect. I can hear you doubting me. 4, have a real luthier judge it. That's gonna be brutal. 5, do all this in 30 days. And 6, give it all away for free. I'm pretty sure the proper way to make an electric guitar body is to do it out of a piece of wood that is at least 1 3/4 inches thick. Now I wanted to do that, but where I get my wood, they were fresh out of thick 2-inch stock. So being on the time crunch that I am, I opted to just glue up several layers of wood like a sandwich. That would also give me the ability to attempt to do what's called a book-matched veneer on the top and back. Basically, you resaw a board like you're slicing a biscuit in half, and if you do it just right, you can get the grain to mirror and look cool. The walnut and maple I snagged for this project seem like good candidates for this treatment, and I think they're going to turn out beautiful. Now you're probably looking at all this wood I'm milling up and thinking, dude, that's a lot of lumber for one electric guitar. What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Are you attempting to make 2 guitars? Having never built one before? My friend, it's so much worse than you know. 4. I'm making 4 guitars. I know, it's not great, but here's what happened. I had these 2 friends from whenever I was a teenager. They're about 10 years older than me, and they played guitar in the youth band in the church that I grew up in. They were cool. I considered them heroes from my youth. They were the ones who inspired me to get into music in the first place, and they were the positive role models that I needed at the time. A few months back, I asked them what their dream guitars were. Travis said that he'd always wanted a Strat with a tobacco sunburst, and Mark said he dreamed of having a Nashville-style Tele, but with a silver sparkle paint job. So, being a complete noob, I somehow thought that it was a good idea to make them their dream guitars and to film the unhinged journey for you to enjoy. Now, while I was milling up the wood, I thought, that's a nice piece of walnut. It would go great with a cherry body. I'll make one for myself. And then I found out that Travis's wife, Tracy, used to have a Tele, but it was stolen by Travis, who then had it stolen by his oldest son when he left for college. So I thought it would be criminal to build a Strat for Travis and not make a Tele for Tracy. So that's how you accidentally decide that it's a good idea to make 4 guitars at once. It's really not the best situation to be in as a beginner, but the good news for you is this. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to make a guitar body, from the cheapest and easiest way to the tech smart, my wallet is filing a complaint expensive way, because this is YouTube. Let's start with the easiest and cheapest way. Now I blew past most of the milling footage because it's mostly boring and repetitive, but this part is super interesting to me. I still can't believe how amazing this walnut grain looks once it's resawn and book matched. I've never been a fan of pairing high contrast woods like walnut and maple. A lot of people do it, but it's not my favorite. But for whatever reason, walnut and cherry just work for my eye. The contrast is softer, more natural, and honestly, one of my favorite combinations. So what I'm doing here is gluing on my favorite walnut top that I made. And I actually did something smart for once. I left one half of the book match longer on one side, and it naturally preserved the true center line and made it foolproof for me to line up the walnut seam with the center line of the cherry body. Kinda nice. About a year ago, I stumbled upon a channel called The Wooden Hobbyist, which has since been appropriately rebranded to Scarlet Guitars. I reached out to Andrew, the creator, just to encourage him and let him know that if he ever needed anything YouTube related, I'd be happy to help, and we've been friends ever since. And it turns out, he makes really good guitars, and he makes acrylic templates and SVG files to help woodworkers build guitars. I've probably texted him 500 times in the last year with what I'm sure are the most basic, rudimentary guitar building questions. But Andrew has been an incredible resource, never making me feel stupid, and is genuinely brilliant when it comes to this type of stuff. So if you haven't checked out the Scarlet Guitars channel, I'm not sure what you're waiting on, go subscribe. I'll link him in the description below the like button. And if you're looking for acrylic templates or files like the ones I'm using, he's where I got them from. So please go and support his small business. I know it would mean a lot. Now this part of the build was probably the easiest and fastest. Rough cut on the bandsaw, not hard to do. I flush trimmed with the trim router on my easy DIY router table. Got a video on how I built that. And then over to the drill press to hog out most of the electronics cavities. After that, I used the plunge base on my trim router to clean everything up to the templates using a pattern bit. The hardest part was sanding all of that stubborn end grain, but this little Oliver spindle sander helped make quick work of that while keeping all the sides 90 degrees. And just like that, we have something that looks like an instrument, is soft, rounded over, beautiful, and that's method one. Kinda easy. Now, you don't have to have a bandsaw to do this. You could use a jigsaw, but you can't resaw and book match with a jigsaw, so it's a good idea to have a quality bandsaw in your shop anyway. The bandsaw can be your best friend in the shop. It's insanely versatile, and it can also be your worst enemy that frustrates you and ruins material if you set it up wrong. Ask me how I know. One of the big challenges with bandsaws is the whole blade change fiasco that no one wants to do. Adjusting all the bearings and getting the tension dialed in just right, most of the time just guessing. And speaking of blades, folding bandsaw blades looks easy on YouTube until you're standing there holding a 12-foot steel noodle wondering if you're about to invent a new body piercing trend. So here's how I finally learned how to do it thanks to my good friend Alex Snodgrass. Put your foot on the blade like I'm doing here, twist the blade towards you twice, and then push straight down. I know it seems weird, but it actually works. And as you can probably tell, this was my first time trying this method, so I was a little unsure, but I followed Alex's advice, and to my surprise, it worked. I then decided to tag it so that I don't forget the blade size and tooth count, because if I don't, future Drew will stand here holding it like it's a lost IKEA part. Now this is the Harvey Alpha A15, a brand new 5 horsepower, 700-pound bandsaw with a touchscreen. George Jetson would be proud. Now here are the things that I've grown to really love about this new saw. First, the nickel coating that is everywhere. From the table to the internal components, this thing is actually rust-proof. The blade stops in 2 seconds. It has this electronic brake that brings the blade to a stop incredibly fast. On my old bandsaw, you could watch an entire failed season of the Dallas Cowboys during the coast down. On this one, 2 seconds and it's done, which is also just like the Dallas Cowboys. The touchscreen tells you the actual blade tension that you're at and the recommended tension range for whichever blade you're using. No more guessing, no more plucking the blade like Jason Bent hoping you got it right. I usually hate bandsaw fences, they're garbage. This one has the Big Eye fence, which is the smoothest fence that I've ever used. My favorite feature by far are the toolless bearing and guide adjustments. No Allen keys, No multi-tool, no rummaging through the drawer everyone pretends is organized but isn't. You just turn a few knobs, they stay exactly where you put them, and everything adjusts exactly how you would intuitively expect. I teamed up with Harvey to make this video, and I'm genuinely grateful because this project has taken an insane amount of time to build and film, and their support has made it possible for me to make this the best video I could for your enjoyment. So head over to harveywoodworking.com to check out this bandsaw and all the other top quality tools that they've brought to the market. If you're like me, you will be impressed with the quality of what they're doing. So in case you don't know, this is called a Shaper Origin. It's essentially a handheld CNC. Normally, it operates like this. There's a little camera right here that reads this tape field, and this area on the shelf is what you cut into. But recently, Shaper just came out with this thing called a bench pilot, which basically is a gantry that can control and push and move around the Shaper Origin so you don't have to do it by hand. This will control everything. So literally, you could set it, walk away, go do something else. So with the Shaper Origin and the workstation and the bench pilot, you effectively have an automated CNC. Now, where this is different from a CNC is that you can design and do everything on the tool. And if you're not sure about something, you can pause it, move it out of the way, check your work, come back in. You can creep up on tolerances. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do here. I want to push the limits of it, and I want to try to cut a full body on this. As you can see, we really don't have the room. So here's my idea. I want to take the workstation off a bench pilot, make a custom platform that will allow me to cut into this area right here, and I think I'd have enough room. Now, I'm new to the Shaper Origin. I really don't know what I'm doing, but I figured, why not figure it out, put it on YouTube, and if I make a mistake, you get to laugh at me. All right, this is what I'm thinking, and the big question is, can our bit extend beyond this? And it totally does. So I'm gonna finish this up and I think it'll work. Now, while I am crazy and delusional enough to attempt this on my first guitar build, I'm not completely foolish. I did a practice run on some plywood I glued up just in case I made one of my typical on-brand mistakes. And this part was really cool because while Bench Pilot was doing its thing, it gave me the freedom to move the camera around and get some really great shots of it working and to knock out a few items on my ever-growing to-do list for this project. And to both your surprise and mine, the test run came out perfect despite me being a noob here. Everything aligned exactly where I wanted it, which meant that it was time to send it on the real walnut telly body blank that I'd worked so hard to mill up and book match perfectly. I've done enough tests, I feel confident to send it, and I'm trying a new angle to get a good top-down shot of it working. Now I'm gonna get slightly technical here because this took me a minute to figure out how to do this, but the solution was actually really simple and it might come in handy for you at some point in the future. Since the walnut top is book matched with a perfect center line, I was worried about cutting the body off center. To fix that, I temporarily installed a sharp V-bit, set my anchor point in Shaper Studio to the top middle of my file, and then I used the V-bit to probe the actual walnut center line, making a custom grid in the software. That gave me a perfect grid to place my file onto that was perfectly matched with the center line, the book match of the walnut, even if I had taped it down off center slightly. And I'm not gonna lie, I nailed it. The cool thing about doing it this way is that Bench Pilot can run all the same steps that I did in the previous method, except I don't have to touch the spindle or guide the tool at all, which saved my mind and body a lot of fatigue. Which means if I had another telly body blank, theoretically, I could just send it and make multiples in no time. Well, it's not theoretical because that's exactly what I did. Bench Pilot cut the second body while I got a head start sending the first one. Now for those paying attention, I cut the body with the neck pocket facing me so that I could creep up on the fit. I intentionally cut the pocket slightly undersized and then used the touchscreen on the origin to sneak up on a perfect friction fit, doing inside cuts with offsets around 0.001 at a time until the neck dropped in with that perfect chef's kiss precision. A few months ago, I had the chance to teach a class at the Texas Woodworking Festival in Austin. And during that event, a guy named Jeremy walked up introduced himself, told me he'd been a longtime viewer, appreciated my sarcasm, and was actually one of my Patreon members. We got to talking about tools and the projects we were both working on, and he mentioned that he owns both a Onefinity CNC and a Shaper Origin, and he uses them for completely different reasons. I was honestly a little shocked because if you've ever read a YouTube comment section, you know people love to pit these tools against each other like it's some kind of tribal warfare. So hearing from a real life YouTube viewer who had common sense, nuance, and reasonable opinions, well, that was refreshing. And for the record, I think that's about 90% of you watching anyway. The rest of you, you know who you are. Now, I told him I was about to start building a guitar, and I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do it on the CNC or on the Origin. And that's when he threw out the idea for this video. Instead of choosing, why not do both? Show the different approaches side by side, because sometimes it's not about which tool is, quote, better. It's about what process you prefer, what space you have, what your budget allows. And so, Jeremy, this video is for you. Now, I've had this CNC for almost a year now, and the main reason I got it was for manufacturing parts for our product business, for cutting projects out of large half sheets of plywood. But the idea of dropping a body blank on the air weights table, pushing a button, and letting it carve an entire guitar body, well, that sounded pretty amazing, and I wanted to figure it out. I want to get into 3D carving so I can eventually cut a full guitar neck, both sides, perfectly contoured on the CNC. But before we run, we must walk. I took the dust collection off so you can see what's happening. And while people will definitely spam the comments with, "This isn't real woodworking," I find this process genuinely therapeutic and fascinating. Look, the junior high and high school that I went to in the mid to late 90s was a math science magnet school. We had computers in every classroom before that was a normal thing. As a freshman, I learned Photoshop, and I think it was version 5 or something. From 7th to 12th grade, I was learning and experimenting with computers for visual and audio creative work. Before I was a woodworker, I was a digital visual artist first. So when I eventually got a CNC and a laser and a 3D printer, it all felt incredibly natural because there were just more tools in my digital toolbox because I was a digital maker first. And I try not to pick fights online or feed the trolls because they're not worth my time. But whenever I see some gatekeeper saying the CNC isn't real woodworking, I can't help but think that person probably rides a horse to work or walks. There's no way they'd drive a gas-powered machine to speed up the work their body would have to do manually. And I bet they don't have a coffee maker or a fridge or a TV or an oven. And there's no way they're communicating with me on a smartphone or a computer using Al Gore's internet. They're clearly using carrier pigeons and smoke signals, and somehow that's getting converted into a YouTube comment, because otherwise they'd be a hypocrite. They'd never rail against technology that speeds up manual labor while also enjoying technology that speeds up their manual labor, like their beloved F-150. Stan in Iowa would never be that foolish. Anyway, go ahead. Type away on your Cheeto-stained keyboard. I look forward to not reading your comment. So while all those who are triggered are firing away on their keyboard, I want to show you an example of how all of this still takes skill and work to do this kind of stuff. The bridge cutout for the Strat was wrong on the file that I got off of the internet. Thank you very much, Etsy. I know, shocker. I want to be clear, this wasn't my fault, for once. So to fix it, I used the Origin to cut a series of plugs with different tolerances that I could glue tightly into place to fix the issue. And then I used some templates to cut out the bridge location where it should have been in the first place, which was an ironic use of all three methods combined into one. Welcome to woodworking. There are so many different ways to do the same thing. It's fine. So far, everything you've seen me do is pretty straightforward. If you're a woodworker, cut a profile, route some pockets, sand, round over, drill holes. It's all pretty basic stuff. And if I can be honest with you, and I know this is YouTube, which is usually not the place for honesty, it wasn't very fun. I mean, it was fine, just not a lot of joy. The only part I truly enjoyed up to this point was resawing and book matching that insane walnut board that I found. I'm experimenting with some black grain filler here, sanding it back to see if I can make the grain pop even more. I've never done this, but it came highly recommended. But this moment you're seeing right now, this was the first time I felt that big spark of satisfaction. There's just something about shaping with a file and a rasp. You can see results basically immediately. And I was nervous because I'm not a hand tool guy, as you probably figured out. So I expected this to go sideways or take a ton of time, but it didn't. It took like 5 minutes. Turns out, all you need is a sharp rasp, a pencil line, and a power sander with a foam interface pad to blend everything. Now this part, oh mama, I'm so excited to show you this. This is the most fun I've had on the entire project. When Travis first told me he wanted a Strat, he said I could just paint it black. And I said, really? A black guitar? That's what you want? After some hesitation, he admitted, not really. What he really wanted was a sunburst, but he wasn't sure I could pull off a sunburst on my first attempt, since I'm a hack. Well, Travis, I don't know if you know this, but there's this little upstart social media platform called YouTube, and you can learn basically anything on it. I found a channel called Big D Guitars, and he has some incredible tutorials on exactly how to do sunburst. I watched a bunch of his videos, fell into his influencer trap, and bought $60 worth of the alcohol-based leather dies he was using. I wrote out all the steps on a note card, set up my camera at the same angle as his video, and I'm not kidding. This is my very first time trying this, and I absolutely love it. It was so much fun. Now, I'm a sucker for that cherry red style sunburst, and I was so excited to show Travis, and it wasn't his favorite. Now, he was polite and said it looked good, but I could tell what he really wanted was one type of sunburst that I couldn't stand, the tobacco sunburst. More brown, more muted, more 1960s Fender Strat style, which honestly is more appropriate. So I made the front more of a tobacco burst, but I left the back the way that I wanted it. So that every time Travis picks up the guitar and sees the back, he'll be reminded that I have better taste than him. Now come on, tell me that doesn't look sick with that tone and flamed maple that I accidentally found. I'm just as shocked as you are that my first attempt wasn't a total disaster. But I can't take credit. I had a good teacher on YouTube University. Now, while the sunburst looks cool, this walnut telly is still my favorite. Like a typical pretend furniture maker on YouTube, I put hard wax oil on it because it's easy, I know how to do it, and I just can't get over how beautiful this walnut is. Remember how Mark wanted a silver sparkle finish on his telly? If you've been paying attention, you saw that I made his telly body with the same walnut veneer as mine. And I was hoping that I could talk him out of wanting a painted sparkle finish. Because I would never, ever paint a book-matched walnut guitar with cheap rattle can paint from Home Depot. I apologize to everyone who was offended and triggered. Now, I knew 100% he wasn't going to go for a natural wood guitar. So I built his guitar out of walnut, fully knowing I was going to spray paint it entirely for the shock value on YouTube. I'm sorry, I am who I am, I can't help it. Once again, as you can clearly see, I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to automotive style paint, so I wanted to see how good of a finish I could get doing it the wrong way. I could have bought proper $40 cans of high quality sparkle paint from some special retailer, but where's the fun in that? I got everything from Home Depot, which was definitely not premium guitar finishing gear, and so I just did primer, silver metallic, glitter, more silver, more glitter, over and over and over again. And the one rule that I stuck to was lots of very thin coats and to preheat your cans in warm water. Well, I guess that's 2 rules. And this process was brutal. It took 5 days, most of that being 20 minutes of work followed by hours of curing before I could sand, recoat, cure again, over and over, build up clear coats, repeat, etc. At first, I was nervous because the glitter texture looked and felt like 80 grit sandpaper, and I was afraid sanding would remove the sparkles, but I went slow, snuck up on it, and it actually turned out pretty good and pretty smooth. Not bad for a Home Depot rattle can special by a rookie. But here's the problem with YouTube videos. You're doing two projects at once, the build and the video. And in this case, the video part really hurt me. When filming the sanding process, I set the guitar upright and needed to check camera focus. And then I walked away. And yes, what you think happened is exactly what happened, except the camera wasn't rolling. Well, in a very dumb moment, I had the guitar standing up like this so I could review the footage that I was shooting. And I had the thought of, I should probably set it down. And I didn't. And when the camera was off, it fell off the bench. This is the worst of it. It hit there, and then it also hit on this back side right there. And right along there. There's three options. Option one is delete my YouTube channel. Option two is try to sand that, recoat. It looks like it just went through the clear coat. And then wait another 6 days before I can polish. Or option three is to make it a relic guitar. I'm probably just gonna go with option one. Now I cannot put into words just how mad I was at myself that day. It wasn't the sanding or repainting that I dreaded, it was the dry time delays, the curing, the recoating, the polishing. This mistake meant at least another week of waiting. So I confessed my sins to Mark and I gave him two options. I could fix it, make it perfect, or we could turn this guitar into a relic and pre-age it and make it look like it's old. Mark, absolute gem of a human, texted me, "I'm all about pre-aging." Apparently, when Mark buys a guitar, he immediately relics it because he doesn't want a perfect looking instrument. So I dodged a bullet there. Love you long time, Mark. When I first started talking about my dumb idea to build a guitar for a YouTube video, everyone I talked to who actually builds guitars pointed me towards a company that I'd never heard of, STEWMAC. Every single one of them said, "Drew, you need to know who they are." And in my ignorance and naivety, I kind of brushed them off thinking, who is this STEWMAC guy? And if he's so great, how come I've never heard of him? Turns out, you can build a guitar with lots of basic tools, but eventually you hit this moment in every build where you realize this would be way faster and easier if I had a tool made specifically for this one weird guitar building task. And that's where STEWMAC Daddy comes in. I've probably spent the last year learning about all the different specialty tools that I've needed, and every time I thought I was done, I'd realize, oh, crap, I need one other thing, and I'd put in another order, which is how I ended up making about a dozen orders with the coolest loot from STEWMAC Daddy. Now, in a lot of fields, people love to gatekeep the trade secrets, but in the guitar world, STEWMAC has turned it upside down on their website, on their YouTube channel, everywhere. So if you want to learn how to build guitars, STEWMAC truly is the place to learn from for free and buy from. I spent so much time learning what tools I needed for this job, and so to save you the research that I did for about a year, I'll put all the links to all the specific things I used from STEWMAC Daddy below. I use 3D printing a lot in my woodworking flow. This trolley is a great example. I had my friend Steve work this up in Fusion, and it's a modification off of a common radiusing sled that a lot of people would build out of wood, but I wanted to 3D print it and adapt it to use my acrylic router plate so I could easily put my router in and out of it. It made putting a specific radius on each fretboard way faster and way easier than if I had done it the old way, which is just attached 80 grit sandpaper to a radius block and then spend like 10 minutes sanding. Speaking of giving things away for free, over the years, I've spent a ton of time and money learning how to 3D print successfully. It's like the core of our product business that's behind our YouTube channel. Because of that, I get questions every week from woodworkers who are on the same journey that I was on just a couple of years ago. And I love helping, but at this point, responding to every single question has become, let's just say, incredibly unprofitable for me. So I decided to do something else that is equally unprofitable, but scales way better. I made a free 3D printing primer course. It's a 6-day email series that lands in your email box once a day, and it basically condenses all the lessons that I learned the hard and expensive way as a beginner into short, calorie-dense cheat sheets designed to save you the headache, the time, and the "why is my printer making that noise" moment. And once again, it's free. Like actually free. 100%. It's not sponsored. It's not a funnel to some paid course. I'm not in the 3D printing education business. There truly is no catch. If you're interested in learning about 3D printing, or if you're just starting out and you want to skip the same mistakes that I made that may be frustrating you, you can join the primer course for free by going to my website and clicking the Learn button. I'll also put a link in the description. And again, I can't stress this enough, there is no catch. The only reason I'm doing this is so that I can help those in my audience who actually need the help, while also not spending hours in my email inbox every day answering questions. So it's actually kind of selfish because I'd like my time back. Most of you don't know this, but I'm a musician. In fact, the first creative discipline I ever learned was music. I picked up the drums in 7th grade, learned guitar in 9th, and after I graduated high school, I'd go to Guitar Center, sit at the keyboards, and teach myself basic piano chords until they kicked me out for playing clocks too many times. Before I was a woodworker, before I was a storyteller, before I ever opened Photoshop, I was a musician. It's my first art form. Many years ago, I came across a welcome address given to parents of incoming music students at the Boston Conservatory. It was written by Dr. Carl Polnick, and it's the single best thing I've ever heard on the meaning and purpose of music. I'll link to it down in the description because it's obviously worth reading in full, but I want to pass along a few insights from that address, ideas I've never heard anywhere else, and since I can't say it better than he did, I'm just going to quote him directly. He said, quote, "One of the first cultures to articulate how music really works were the ancient Greeks." And this is going to fascinate you. The Greeks said that music and astronomy were two sides of the same coin. Astronomy was seen as the study of relationships between observable, permanent, external objects, and music was seen as the study of relationships between invisible, internal, hidden objects. Music has a way of finding the big, invisible moving pieces inside of our hearts and souls and helps us figure out the position of those things inside of us. Very few people have ever been to a wedding where there was absolutely no music. There might have been only a little music, there might have been some really bad music, but with few exceptions, there is some music. And something very predictable happens at weddings. People get all pent up with all kinds of emotions, and then there's some musical moment when the action of the wedding stops and someone sings or plays the flute or something. And even if the music is lame, even if the quality isn't good, predictably, 30 or 40% of the people who are going to cry at a wedding cry a couple of moments after the music starts. Why? The Greeks. Music allows us to move around those big, invisible pieces of ourselves and rearrange our insides so that we can express what we feel even when we can't talk about it. Can you imagine watching Indiana Jones or Superman or Star Wars with the dialogue but no music? What is it about the music swelling up at just the right moment in E.T. so that all the softies in the audience start crying at exactly the same moment? I guarantee you, if you showed that movie with the music stripped out, it wouldn't happen that way. The Greeks. Music is the understanding of the relationship between invisible, internal objects. That's pretty cool, huh? Then later in the speech, the doctor goes on and he gives a bunch of examples of how important music is in our everyday life. But the most profound example he gave was from a small concert he performed in a nursing home in a small Midwestern town. He says, quote, "I was playing with a very dear friend of mine who is a violinist. We began, as we often do, with Aaron Copland's Sonata, which was written during World War II and dedicated to a young friend of Copland's, a young pilot who was shot down during the war. Now, we often talk to our audiences about the pieces we're going to play rather than providing them with written program notes. But in this case, because we began the concert with this piece, we decided to talk about the piece later in the program and to just come out and play the music without explanation. Midway through the piece, an elderly man seated in a wheelchair near the front of the concert hall began to weep. This man, whom I later met, was clearly a soldier. Even in his 70s, it was clear from his buzz-cut hair, square jaw, and general demeanor that he had spent a good deal of his life in the military. I thought it was a little odd that someone would be moved to tears by that particular movement of that particular piece, but it wasn't the first time I had heard cry in a concert, and we went on with the concert and finished the piece. But when we came out to play the next piece of the program, we decided to talk about both the first and second pieces, and we described the circumstances in which Copeland was written and mentioned its dedication to a downed pilot. The man in the front of the audience became so disturbed that he had to leave the auditorium. I honestly figured that we would not see him again, but he did come backstage afterwards, tears and all, to explain himself. What he told us was this. During World War II, I was a pilot, and I was in an aerial combat situation where one of my team's planes was hit. I watched my friend bail out and watched his parachute open, but the Japanese planes which had engaged us returned and machine-gunned across the parachute cords so as to separate the parachute from the pilot. And I watched my friend drop away into the ocean, realizing that he was lost. I've not thought about this for many years, but during that first piece of music you played, this memory returned to me so vividly that it was as though I was reliving it. I didn't understand why this was happening. Why now? But then when you came out to explain that this piece of music was written to commemorate a lost pilot, it was a little more than I could handle. How does the music do that? How did it find those feelings and those memories in me? Remember the Greeks. Music is the study of invisible relationships between internal objects. The concert in the nursing home was the most important work I have ever done. For me to play for this old soldier and help him connect somehow with Aaron Copeland, and to connect their memories of their lost friends, to help him remember and mourn his friend, this is my work. This is why music matters. End quote. Now that was what the doctor had to say. And this is me, Drew, talking. If any of you are watching and listening, and you are in a school district that has decided to cut funds to the music program, but has a multi-million-dollar football program, perhaps you could lovingly invite that foolish school board to read Dr. Carl Polnick's address in Boston in September of 2004. Because music matters. And it really matters when we teach it to kids. Someone taught it to me whenever I was a kid. And my videos would not pack the same punch they do today if it weren't for the musician's heart inside of me. Okay, I'm curious. When you watch this footage, does this look easy? Because as I watch myself building this guitar in like high-speed footage, it seems like I know what I'm doing, but I can assure you, I really do not. I know what a guitar looks like, but the entire time I was building this thing, I was fighting the fear of messing up and fighting my own perfectionism. If you ask me what the hardest part of this whole project was, it wouldn't be cutting the body, routing the pockets, fretting, or finishing. It would be absolutely the mental game. Now, I highly recommend building an electric guitar, a Tele style for sure if it's your first one, but I do not recommend trying to make your very first guitar at a quality level that you'd feel comfortable giving away and blessing your friends with. That, in hindsight, was kind of a dumb idea. If I were a normal person, and by normal, I mean smart, rational human being, I would have built my first guitar off camera with zero stakes out of the cheapest lumber I could with no pressure, just to make all the mistakes as fast as possible with the goal of failing. But I didn't do that. I did this instead. And while it makes for a great video, it was not a great experience. I've talked about this before, but there's a book that I love called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about the resistance, capital T, capital R, the resistance. That invisible force inside every creative person that pushes back whenever you try to do something meaningful. And man, I felt the resistance on this one. These builds were easily the hardest creative things that I've ever taken on, and I felt every inch of it. Andrew from Scarlet Guitars told me something that was both very true and very on brand for me, and it kind of hit a little too close to home, which is a good thing. I think he was getting tired of me texting him every other day with questions, probably wondering, how long is this going to take you? At one point, he said, Drew, your perfectionism is getting in the way. I mean, that attention to detail is part of why you've had success, but in this case, it's slowing you down and making things harder than they need to be. And he was right. I fought my perfectionism the whole way. I paid the dummy tax more times than I cared to admit. And if my friend Jimmy were here, he'd look at me and say, Drew, you idiot. You go to school in the first one, don't you know? But I will give credit where credit is due. STEWMAC has a fretting 101 video on their YouTube channel, and it's an absolute masterclass on how to fret a guitar, and it's free. That one video is worth $99 all day long. Honestly, probably more, probably like $500. Like they should charge $500 for this information, because in that video, a seasoned luthier basically apprentices you and walks you through all the tips and tricks that you need to know to do a proper fret job. And I watched that video about 5 times straight through, and then I rewatched different sections while working on the fretboard because I was terrified of messing this up and coming this far. The neck is the most important part of the guitar. It's what a player interacts with. It's what determines whether it stays in tune, whether it buzzes, whether it feels alive in your hands. I know how to make things look good, but I've never made a guitar neck, and I don't know how to make it function good. So this was the part that scared me the most. But I will say, I'm genuinely happy with my first attempt at a fret job. It looks as good as it possibly could. The frets are level, they're crowned, they're smooth, they don't hurt your fingers, all the things you want. But the real verdict won't come from me. It'll come when Travis and Mark finally hold the guitar in their hands, and I wonder what they'll say about my very first fret job. And that's not some like fake YouTuber like setting up like at the time that I'm recording this, they haven't touched the guitar yet. I honestly don't know how they're gonna respond. So I have this theory that it takes several different high-level skill sets to make a good guitar. There's making the guitar and shaping the instrument, like everything you've seen up to this point. Then there's finishing, a whole world in its own. I suspect there are people at guitar companies who have done nothing but finishing for 20 years and are absolute wizards. And if there's one area that I can improve drastically, it is this one. I really didn't know what I was doing. Then there's fretting, as I've already explained, really specific, and you're playing a game of thousandths of inches. Then there's the electronics, arguably the most important factor in tone in an electric guitar. And then there's the final setup, adjusting the bridge, the nut, the string action, getting the intonation right, all the stuff that actually makes the guitar playable and stay in tune. By the time I reached this point in the build, I was getting really nervous because despite it looking really good, I still felt like I was in over my head. Things were taking longer than I had hoped, and so I made 2 wise decisions. The first, which you may have picked up already, was to abandon the other 2 guitars and just focus on the Strat and Telly that I was making for Travis and Mark. I'll finish Tracy's off camera once I know that I can actually make a guitar, and I'll finish mine at some point. And the second decision that I made was to get a professional to double check my work before I start drilling holes in this thing. So, off camera, I took both guitar bodies and unattached necks to a local guitar shop called Lamb's Guitars. I literally walked in holding the pieces like mismatched Lego bricks and said, "Hi, can you tell me how far off I am?" We put the necks on, checked everything with their fancy scale length measuring thingy, and I hate to say this, but the bridges lined up exactly 25.5 inches from the edge of the nut, exactly where they were supposed to be. The luthier looked at me and said, "Are you sure this isn't your first attempt at a guitar?" Like they were actually really impressed. And listen, that gave me a nice little boost of confidence, enough wind in my sails to call Mark, have him come over, and to work his magic, soldering up the pickups and doing the electronics like we talked about. We had a great time. It was surreal watching one of my childhood heroes get excited about the work that I put in for this gift for him. I had high hopes that we'd wire it up, string it, and hear it sing for the very first time. And then I might have gotten a little too confident because Mark pointed out that I'd forgotten to drill one of the holes connecting a pickup cavity to the control cavity. And I'm not sure if you can tell by the angle of my drill here, but this doesn't look quite right at all. It would probably be a bad thing if I messed up royally at the finish line and accidentally drilled a hole straight through the back of the guitar in front of Mark, on camera, in 4K, for the entire world to see on the internet, right? I would never do that. I'm not a hack. Did I get through?
Yep, you did.
It's your guitar.
It's fine.
Are you serious? Come on, dude!
Plug it and patch it.
Oh my gosh.
How did you not even get that?
I don't know. I thought I had the channel. Well, you're pre-18, this, right?
Yeah.
What a dumb. I'm glad you were here. and that you encouraged this nonsense.
Just run a dowel in there. Cut, get a Q-tip and dot a little paint on it. You'll be fine. You got. I mean, what's one more? Honestly,
What's one more?
At this
Yeah.
point? There it is.
I'm gonna get filled with comments for that. Yeah, that was fun. So I could have left that part out and you would have never known. But it wouldn't be honest. And I don't want you to think that I'm better than I actually am, because I make mistakes all the time. Mistakes happen. We're human. It's okay. Most of these things can be recovered from. At least that's what I tell myself when I cry myself to sleep every time I think about it. Oh, it sucked. I feel really bad about this, and Mark didn't love the Perloid pick guard that I picked out for him. So to make it up to him, I cut him a custom pick guard on the Origin with a flat white mat. And after seeing it, I actually agree with him that this one looks way better. Now, I didn't trust myself to be around these guitars any longer, and I wanted to go crawl into a hole and die from embarrassment from my hack ways. So I gave the Strat pickups for Travis's guitar to Mark, and I asked him to take it all and finish the wiring without me before I messed something else up. Travis wanted these special high-end boutique pickups from Rocket Fire Guitars. Supposedly, they match the vintage tones of the early Strats, but are more stable and last longer. So I asked Mark to take horizontal video of him installing the pickups, and I guess in a stroke of irony, his impression of pretending to be a YouTuber is about as good as my impression of being a luthier, because he sent me vertical video and no shots of him actually wiring it. Go figure. It sounds like a guitar.
Yeah.
Dude, I can hear that special tone from that hole in the back.
Yeah. That's where it gets out, actually. I'm going to mic it right there.
I got a little country we can throw in there.
Okay, let me...
It's beautiful. Holy crap.
You like the...
I do. I love it. That's really cool too.
Yeah, that turned out better.
And the neck is... So this is different here. What's this?
It's Taylor.
Is it really?
That's written by Jeffrey.
That is awesome, man.
That's your brother's actual signature.
That is insane.
Well, the bad news is it took longer than 30 days to complete the guitars. It took about 35 or so over the course of 2 months. But the good news is it gave Travis the opportunity to throw in and help us with the final touches, because I don't think he trusts me with the drill bit near his guitar body. Did you go through the back?
No, I did not.
Now, these guitars are easily the hardest project that I've ever taken on, and also the most rewarding. My wife says they're the best thing I've ever made, and I think she may be right, but I'm curious what you guys think. And to the seasoned guitar makers out there, please be gentle. And now the moment both of us have been waiting for. Do these even sound good? It's got like some soul to it.
It's still sustaining, too. That's beautiful.
Oh, I like it.
as I get right there.
Give me your best secret on.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, dude.
Dude, I haven't been in those waters
Oh, come on.
since about 10 minutes ago. We were trying to get through those waters.
Yeah, it's all right.
That's my best bet skill for you.
I know what gig you've been playing. That's pretty awesome though.
Well, I'm just as shocked as you that these sound that good, being a hack who doesn't know what he's doing and building a guitar for the first time. But the thing that I've learned that's kind of controversial, that might make some guitar makers mad, is that it really doesn't matter what kind of wood you use. It's all in the pickups. If you use quality pickups and you have someone who knows how to play the guitar, you're going to get a really, really good sound, provided they're playing through a really good amp. So, lesson learned. As a way of saying thank you, because this is the longest video I've ever produced and the hardest, most daunting video. It took me 2 months to film all this, edit it, make the guitars, figure it all out. I am beat doing this. But to reward you for watching it, I will make a special discount code to my online store to give you a secret 20% off anything we make, whether that's digital plans or our router plate or track saw accessories or battery holders, any of that stuff, just for you for making it this far in the video. Just use the code HACK20, hack because, you know, we'll see you next time.